Okay, welcome back. This video is going to be about taking all of our rendered pictures that we've rendered from our city project and then converting it into a video by using Adobe Premiere Pro. So our end product will be something like this. This is Paul Fritz coming at you from KDATA Eye in the Sky. We are racing to the scene right now where a spacecraft has just landed in our city. It is unknown their intent. We have no idea what they're going to do. Okay, I think that's enough of that. You'll get the idea of what we're trying to do here. So first off, let's talk a little bit about Maya and rendering. I did not make a video to show you how to render, so I'll show you that real quick, and then you can render your scenes, or your frames rather, out into a bunch of pictures, which we'll use to help create the video that you just saw, or a video that you're going to create. And from there, turn it into a video that we add sound effects to, as well as a voiceover maybe. Okay, so our settings. Right now we're in modeling, and we were previously probably in the animation mode here. Give it a second. My hypershade always comes up. We're going to get rid of that. All right, so now you can see that we have all of this set up. And what we've done is we've gone through and rendered only a few of the frames. We basically used the two cameras that we've set up, both the point camera and the regular camera, and used those images. We're going to use those frames and decide what we actually want to render, because both of these are quite lengthy. I think I have about 2,000 frames on both camera 1 and also here on camera 2. Yep, quite a bit of camera frames. So, and to render each one of these, especially with as much as we have in the scene and the lighting and everything, it could take anywhere, since we have it on the lowest settings right now, and I'll talk about that in a minute, for the rendering, it took about 45 to 50 seconds to render each individual frame. So that would be 4,000 frames times 40 to 50 seconds. So even if we rounded it up to a minute, that's 4,000 minutes. We don't want to spend that much time on this video. Now, if you really wanted to make a high quality video, you can go in and really adjust your settings in Arnold, in our rendering, or your rendering software that you're going to use, and you could really extend out that time, and then again, pick the frames that you want, or you can render all of them, and if you have plenty of time to do that, and then go in and have more images to choose from to be able to set your scene up. This is a little bit clunky the way I did it, the way that we're going to splice things together. They don't smooth and transition very well because, again, we only used about 400, maybe 500 frames. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and talk about rendering. What I've done is you go now over here from animation, we're going to go to rendering. And you can also do the same thing by changing your workspace here in Maya 2017-18 by changing your rendering to rendering standard or rendering expert. And when we do that, you can see that you have a bunch of other tools that come in. You can adjust your lighting and everything like that, but we did not get that sophisticated with this. This is more of an intro to show you kind of how the processes work. And if we took a look at rendering expert, you'll see that we have even more of screen tools to mess with. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my classic from here. I'm just going to go into our regular rendering tab up here. And up here we can go to render, and we can get to render settings from here, or you can also, right here with the clacker and the gear, you can also get to your render settings from there. What I've done is I like to use PNG because they're non-lossy. That's kind of important if you're going to be doing a lot of compression and decompressing, but JPEGs will work just fine as well. Those are my more favorite methods to use. Of course, there's many other choices here depending on the software you're using and what your end results are going to be. Okay, the next thing is we need to make sure that we can pick our frames, because right now it's set up to just do a single frame. If we were to click on render, it would render wherever the camera we chose was at, and that would all be that we'd see. So now what I want to do is change it to name hashtag, extension, or pound sign, or sharp sign, whatever you refer to this little pen, this little hash looking thing here. There are some other choices as well. I like making sure that we have extension at the end, mostly because when we do that, the software that we're using will most likely recognize what we're trying to do, especially if we're using Premiere Pro. It won't recognize numbers at the end. All right, so I'm going to pick that one. And when we do that, you'll notice that there's a start frame and end frame now populates, and we can put in whatever numbers we want in here. And again, this is where you can make those choices. If you decide you don't want to do all the frames that you have for your camera, for your animation, you could go back in and decide to do a series of these. And you can do them, you know, a few at here. Maybe you wanted to do 100 to 200, and then 500 to 600, and then some more like that. All right, and then you could skip frames. You could also do it by a certain number if you wanted to skip frames as well. You want to make sure you set your camera here for your renderable camera. In this case, I have camera 1 selected. Your presets, depending on what you're trying to end up with, you can do everything from a 4K, you can do HD 540, 720, 1080, all kinds of other choices. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it here at the 1080 that I have selected right now. And then we're going to not mess with any of this because this is the default for the HD 1080. Now, here under Arnold Renderer, if you wanted to really clean up your scene, give you some sharp edges, make sure that all the lights were bouncing correctly and that the shadows weren't kind of blurry, we would go in and we would make some adjustments to our camera, our diffuse, our specular, transmission, all of these here. We could also go in and make some additional changes to our ray depth, especially if we had light passing through glass and we wanted to reflect off of mirrors and bounce back out and things like that. So you can do quite a bit with your onboard renderer, in this case the Arnold renderer. If you have another rendering engine that you're going to use, I'm not going to talk about that here. I'll let you, hopefully you know what you're doing with that particular rendering engine. All right, so that's pretty much all I'm going to do for these settings. I'm going to hit close. Now, one thing we would normally do is we would do a batch render, and we would check that here to do the batch rendering. But Arnold doesn't provide a batch render in this case, and so for this particular rendering engine, we're not going to be able to do that. What we are going to do is we're going to go to render sequence instead, and we're going to check the option box. And right here at the top, render sequence frames 1 through 10, it would be whatever you had set up under your render settings. In this case, since I had 1 through 10 here, that was what you would see there. Notice that here I've selected camera 1, but the rendering sequence has gone with camera 2. You need to make sure that you have the camera set up that you're intending to render with. And the reason why it's going with camera 2 is because that's what I'm currently on down here, camera 2. Since I wanted to render on camera 1, I'm going to click on camera 1. And here, if you decide you want to put it into a different folder than what your default is, you can do that as well. One of the things I like to do, and I'll bring that up now, is I like to go in, if I'm going to use multiple cameras, and indicate what those cameras are, and even scenes if you need to, so that you can keep track of what information, what images you are rendering as you move along, so that you can easily find them later on, and then render them into those folders. And this is under our default project. So here is the RCity folder, project folder with all of our defaults in it. And you can also see I added an Adobe Premiere because I'm trying to keep everything for this project together so that it's easier for me to find. And what's going to happen is you're going to render these into images, and then, like I said, inside there I've created some new folders to help me keep things organized and keep track. Because I work on several projects, it's easier to make sure I keep everything together in that one project instead of in multiple folders across my desktop. It's also easier when I go to export it if I want to just work on a different system. If I have my project folder, I can just copy this folder, click and drag it to whatever, to a separate hard drive, and then take it with me as a complete project. Everything is already in there. I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this out. So with that said, I would render it here. Right now I'm just going to put these 10 right here on this desktop because I'm going to delete them. I don't really need them. I'm going to go ahead and just go up and select the images as my directory, and then I'm going to hit select. With that done, since I picked a different location, you can see that here. And then I'm just going to hit render and close. It'll go through the process of rendering those first 10. It may take a few seconds, and since I just opened this, it may also go back through and reset or convert all of my textures that are in this scene to TXT files. So that may take a few seconds. I'm going to go ahead and pause this while this catches up and does this little rendering so I can show you the next step. Okay, so welcome back. It went ahead and converted my textures as I thought it would, and now I'm in the process of rendering. You can see that just by the settings that I had set up, that it's taking probably around 50 seconds to a minute to render each one of these frames. It is a timely process to render, and the higher you set your Arnold settings, the higher quality settings you have, the longer it's going to take. So what I'm going to do now is show you if you're rendering and you look at it and decide, oh, something's wrong, I don't like the lighting, I need to fix it, but you don't know how to stop it because you can't just click off up here. It won't let you do that. So what we need to do is hit escape on the keyboard, and now it'll stop. You may have to actually X out of it, and then it'll stop mid render. And if I brought that back up, you will see, of course I closed it, so give me a second here to bring that back up. You can see that I've rendered through 5 frames, and this one is a partial render right here. It's where I stopped it at, and there you have it. So that's the process for rendering using Arnold. So this would be the Arnold that comes with your Maya as a rendering engine. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now. My next video is going to be about taking these rendered images that we've done and taking them and importing them into Premiere Pro, splicing them together, adding some audio, and then rendering it into a video using Premiere Pro. Thank you. If you like what you saw, please subscribe to my channel. If not, please let me know so I can fix anything that's wrong. Thank you. You have a good night.